Words, a study in contrasts. Lashon hara is a weapon manufactured solely from words. The Torah considers the harm those words create to be massive. So sharp a wedge does Lashon hara drive between a Jew and Hashem that it even deprives him of divine assistance in a time of need. And the sheer number of Torah directives relating to speech has no direct parallel in any other function. Obviously, Lashon hara must be doing more harm on a far greater scale than the average person can readily perceive, because people speak many times a day, every day of their lives, and most of what's said appears to create no discernible consequences. It becomes easy to perceive speech as a relatively benign force. At the time of the destruction of the second Bet HaMikdash, the people toiled in Torah, performed mitzvot, and gemilut chasidim. Yet the Bet HaMikdash was destroyed because of baseless hatred. Lashon hara destroyed the Bet HaMikdash and keeps it in ruins today. The Bet HaMikdash was the Shekhinah's dwelling place among Hashem's chosen people. The Jews, at the time of the second Bet HaMikdash, were learned and fervently devoted to Hashem. And yet, because of divisiveness among his people, Hashem allowed his house to be destroyed. The reasons for this national disaster, whose effects we still suffer, is baseless hatred, which has its expression in Lashon hara. Maharal explains that a common thread running through every kind of Lashon hara is its capacity to cause division and separation. This factor stands stark opposition to the goal of the Jew, which is to achieve unity between the Jewish people and Hashem himself, who is one, and there is no oneness like him in any way. The mitzvah of Shmiras HaShalom is an expression of the unity of the Jewish people. Seeing the good in others stems from seeing their common bond as Jews created in Hashem's image. Being sensitive to the feelings of others arises from recognizing each Jew as a part of oneself. Our sages state that taking on the observance of the mitzvah and strengthening it throughout Klal Israel is the most effective means of laying the foundation of a new Bet HaMikdash. What more is there to say about this sin, Lashon hara, which is the severest of all sins? Man's ultimate task is not to sin with his mouth. The sages say that one's good deeds and Torah knowledge cannot offset the damage that one does with speech. Just as the learning of Torah equals all other mitzvot combined, so does speaking Lashon hara equal all sins combined. Lashon hara engenders an almost limitless quantity of sins. Each word of such conversation is a sin of its own. Each carries the full weight of the transgression of Lashon hara, setting into motion all of its destructive power. Thus, just one conversation can produce hundreds of sins. There are those who acquire wealth, but in truth have nothing. Proverbs. Weighted down by these sins, the speaker of Lashon hara enters the world to come with an even greater deficit because his words have erased so much of his mitzvot and learning that would otherwise stand as a precious merit. The Coffetz Chaim explains about the verse from Proverbs as an illustration of this point. It speaks of a man who has devoted his 120 years on earth to Torah and mitzvot, building a vast reserve of wealth for the world to come. But when he reaches his destination and his accounts are considered, he discovers that actually he has nothing at all. Because of the Lashon hara he had spoken, his merit has evaporated without a trace. After a lifetime of labor, he arrives in eternity empty-handed. Not only does Lashon hara deprive a Jew of the fruits of his labors in Torah, it actually causes those mitzvot to be exchanged for sins. Shavos Chalevos describes the process. If someone is learned and distinguished and has achieved status in the community whereby his words carry weight, his speaking Lashon hara will deprive him of all the mitzvot he has done to reach his position, because the position has been used to do harm. The mitzvot that got him there will no longer be his. Instead, they will accrue to the person his words have harmed. This is the victim's compensation for the pain, loss of face, or financial loss that the speaker of Lashon hara has caused him. In effect, the speaker's mitzvot have become transferred to his victim, and in their place are the many transgressions involved in the one sin of Lashon hara. For every moment one guards one's tongue, he earns reward that is beyond the comprehension of angels. The principal way of meriting the world to come is through guarding one's mouth, which is greater than Torah learning and mitzvos, because the mouth is the holy of holies. Shmiras HaShalom builds a beautiful, radiant share in the world to come, the reward for each moment of restraining one's mouth from speaking Lashon hara. Were every Jew able to preview The reward that comes to those who restrain their tongues, the resolve to refrain from speaking Lashon Hara, would be unshakable. In his works, the Coffetz Chaim refers repeatedly to the sage's statement that Hashem's divine light hidden away from the time of creation and reserved only for tzaddikm is rewarded to one who turns aside from the temptation to speak Lashon Hara. Every time he is tempted, but exercises this restraint, he merits this reward. This light, explains the Coffetz Chaim, is Hashem's radiance, whose beauty is incomprehensible even to angels. For one whose eye is on heaven, the possibility of meriting this light is the only incentive needed to try, at the moment, to guard one's tongue.